An honest question I'm asking myself is what are the expectations of the markets and what's my current feeling surrounding the markets? In our previous videos, we have been mentioning that feelings do not really matter. Ultimately, it's all about rationality, but regardless of that, the markets are completely different than what they have been in the previous cycles. And that's where everybody's expectations start to come in because things have been happening in a certain way in the previous cycles. For sure, it must be happening in this exact same way during this cycle. However, that is simply not the case. There's an old mantra that says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. A famous quote from Mark Twain, which, if you think about that for a second, then there are so many, similarities with the current cycle based on that quote. On a higher level, we are living in a world where infinite supply is being printed while taxes are going through the roof. The rich get more rich and the poor get more poor, in which the wealth gap hasn't been as big as before. People base their actions on historical patterns, and as things have been going well over the past decades, they should go well for the upcoming period, pushing themselves massively into debt to purchase their house, which is for sure going to be worth more in the upcoming years. This entire spiral brings more anger into people, through which you can see that left and right becomes more an extremist, or it becomes more extreme, in which the politics are standing up, and that's what we're seeing everywhere. On the other hand, if we zoom into the famous quote, it's also very reliable to crypto. The cycle isn't repeating as it has been in the previous cycles, but it does quite often rhyme with the previous cycles. It's the difference is that we're having a lot of external shocks taking into place that pushes the mark left and right and mostly down. So the underlying fundamental growth in the cycle itself remains intact, and that's where the trick comes in. You, me, social media all had a certain expectation of this cycle, and at this point, the expectations were that the markets were going to be substantially higher. However, the reality is that the markets are substantially lower, and that's where the anger and fear comes in. And if you have a combination of the two, then it's also in line with the topic that we discussed previously about staying in the game. And the difficulty of staying in the game comes into two ways. One is through price action, and the second one is through time. The first one is, if you recall that you are experiencing the first real 20% correction in a day, most likely you will remember it. I do remember my first ones. And that is a heavy one to take, but you usually can get on with it quite fastly. While if you're enduring a 1% drop on the markets for months and months, that's going to be really painful. And that's where, if you look at the Wall Street cheat sheet, that's where we are right now. You can basically say that currently we are in the depression phase when we're looking at the Bitcoin valuation. So altcoins valued against Bitcoin. That's where we're currently at. And that's also what you can see on social media. And that's also what you can see in the sentiment. And you can see that it's a constant period of time where nothing goes up, just gradually going down a little bit from the point that it came from. And that's a test for everyone that's invested into the markets. And that's where the answer comes into my question, which is, how do I feel about the current markets? Well, honestly, I'm just as you. I'm very unhappy about the current momentum, about the returns. But if you go back to the Wall Street cheat sheet, you can see that it goes into cycles. And after a period of downwards momentum, there is a bull market taking place. And then basically you come to the conclusion of you enter when nobody is interested. You leave when the barber starts pitching about crypto projects that are going to cure cancer or whatever there is. So I think that we are currently at the bottoming of the altcoin markets, as fundamentally we see a combination of steady growth taking place that inevitably will be priced into the markets at some point. I don't know when. I do know that I'm betting on it, and I know that this bet can change a lot of people's lives. However, in my view, the 4-year cycle doesn't exist anymore. It's a liquidity cycle, it's a macro cycle, and crypto has grown up in which it becomes a mature asset and it starts to move like one. History doesn't repeat itself, it often rhymes. That's why you should stay patient and stick to the game. During these markets, I'm always looking for opportunities to build my portfolio, and OKX is bringing you an opportunity. They are the first fully licensed exchange in Europe with the lowest fees. And to help you a little bit with your portfolio and to celebrate this milestone, they are giving away up to 50 euros in Bitcoin if you sign up today on the exchange. Signing up can be done within 5 minutes, and if you deposit 100 euros worth of crypto, you'll receive the first 20 euros in Bitcoin. Start rebuilding your portfolio today. Go to the link in the description or scan the QR code and enjoy up to 50 euro in Bitcoin.